You're a popular guy, Dave.
Let me make this spot for you. I got plenty of room. It's all good. Okay.
Thank you.
We're gonna paint.
Are you?
Yeah, the kitchen and the living room.
Yeah. What are you gonna, what color? Or have you picked a color?
Yeah, we just did 2 different colors. Kitchen and living room. It's kind of like we have a bleeding heart. I don't know if you ever saw that picture of the bleeding heart that Ed took. It was from our backyard. And there's kind of like colors in the background. So we're picking up on that.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah,
That sounds like fun.
yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, it's nice to get rid of some of the white.
That white.
Yeah.
Do you have all the white?
I painted everything
Oh, you did?
kind of a light brown,
Nice.
tannish.
We're waiting for one more guy to come down.
We're waiting for Roger to come down. I'm sorry for interrupting you. Just to give you a little history, I pulled this out of the chest this morning. Most of the time the grandkids have been wearing it. Along with my jungle cap or hat back there that I pretty much used during the monsoons. I got a little afraid that I wasn't going to be able to fit into this, but it seemed to work just fine.
Good job.
So I had to roll it up because it was so hot during the monsoon season that you couldn't wear it long sleeves. So I rolled it up and we're ready to go. Today we're going to talk about PTSD, and I was a little nervous to do this. I've done 3 videos for the VA, all about PTSD and the treatment that I had. That apparently at some point 10 years ago they thought it was pretty phenomenal. I've never done it to a group of non-veterans. Now we do have some veterans here, and we're going to be introducing them in just a little bit. But so I've never done one to a non-veteran group, and so this is kind of fun for me because PTSD is common in all kinds of people. People that have had abuse in their family, people that have had car accidents, close to drownings, airplane accidents, all kinds of things. So I mean, it's not something that's unusual. So what I'm going to try to do, and I do have sheets over there about explaining some of the more common symptoms of PTSD. And on the back side, it is some of the general treatments for PTSD, and there's a couple of new ones, or there is a new one that I've been fortunate enough to hear from Paul, that his cousin has been working on. Oh, there's Paul. His cousin has been working on, so that was exciting to read that.
Here's Roger. Where do you want Roger?
Downstairs.
Right up here.
Right up there.
Roger,
He can sit right in front of you if you want.
Roger, come up here.
Join the veterans,
Yeah,
Roger.
We'll be off to the side.
This is fine here.
There was one really interesting thing that I found. Both Dick and I were fortunate enough to be awarded a Quilt of Valor about, I don't know, a month ago, 6 weeks ago, something like that.
Some
Is
others in here have been too.
I'm sure. Is Linda here?
Yeah.
There she is.
Karen's in the back there too.
And Karen, there we are. They were so gracious and so grand. But Linda said something that just blew my mind. She said that it's not what service you were in, it's not what you did, it's not where you were. That really struck me because it doesn't matter what you did or where you were or whatever. If you served at a time of great need. I mean, we're all Vietnam era veterans or people, but one of the things I would very much appreciate if all the veterans would stand and if we could give them a short round of applause. I think that would be fantastic. So, you want to sit? No, that's fine. We'll let Doug sit. Would the rest of the veterans here stand, please? We have in the front a wounded veteran, apparently. Is there any one of you that would like to just give a brief 1 or 2 minute presentation of what you were in, where you were, and what you did? Anyone? We don't have any takers, okay. In that packet that Linda gave me it was the author unknown, and I'll read it. God bless the generations that have served the great nation since World War I. A veteran, whether on active duty, retired, or reservist, is someone who at one point in their life wrote a blank check made payable to the government of these United States of America for the amount of and including their life. That's pretty awesome to me. I don't care what you did. You did your job, you served your time. You don't know where you were going to be serving, and I didn't either. You know, you could be serving in some of the best places in the world, like Hawaii or something like that. It doesn't matter. Or you could be like me, serving in Minot, North Dakota in the wintertime. On missile security, no doubt. But I was told that, Dave, you're so good. You used to drive as a kid on gravel roads hunting? Yes. Well, here's a 4-wheel drive vehicle. You can get anywhere that you need to go by doing that. It is an awesome, I did my job, just as all of you have done your job. You could serve at some kind of dangerous places. Korea, and I have several friends that are Korean vets. World War II even. Vietnam. And I take that back. I did choose to go there, but I'll explain that in a little bit because of the deal. But it's a situation that we get through. I want to explain PTSD a little bit. It's been around since the Civil War. There have been issues with battle fatigue, and it's never been really called something. It was called shock. I'm sorry. It was called shell shock in World War II. I happen to have two uncles that served in combat during World War II. Both of them came home extremely damaged. Do you suppose they got any help at all? No, they didn't. And they suffered through it. It wasn't till after World War II, after the Vietnam War, that it was starting to be called PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome. The VA doesn't like the word syndrome because that means there's something wrong with you. there is nothing wrong with you. This is a natural, that's a natural progression of being involved in some sort of drastic situation. Doesn't matter if it's war or battle. It can be car accidents. It can be family trauma. It can be all kinds of things. And that's the real reason that I was willing to talk about PTSD here. And when you look at all of the veterans that have been killed through all of the wars, it's totaling over 16,000 veterans. That's the ultimate sacrifice of paying it to your country. This is the dumbest picture I could find. Graduating from high school. I couldn't get my graduation picture up on the screen for some reason. I did play football, starting my freshman year in high school. My dad was a barber. That is probably evident because all he did was buzz cuts. But this had some impact on my life because after I graduated, I had an idea of going to college. And the football coach from Concordia up in Moorhead sat in my living room and offered me a scholarship to play football. I was 6'3", 240 pounds. Dick and I played together, which was a lot of fun. I was excited. I had a guy as a teacher that I absolutely looked up to who was the art teacher and the baseball coach. He talked me into going out for baseball. And I really idolized him. And I had some ability in art. And I wanted to be an art teacher. And I wanted to be a football coach. Wow. My plan for my life was in place. Right. So I decided to go to Concordia. I played my first year as a freshman at Concordia. I was 248 at the time. I had a lot of fun, made a lot of friends, played my sophomore year. The art teacher, a guy by the name of Cyrus Ronning, the last day of my sophomore year, I was planning to come back, and he called me into his office. And he said, "Dave, we just completed a painting class, and you work in some of the strangest colors I think I've ever seen in my entire life." And he gave me a colorblind test that showed that I was red-green colorblind. And then he said, "You can't teach art and be colorblind." And that absolutely blew my mind, destroyed my whole future. I didn't know what to do. My folks picked me up after the next day from our apartment, my apartment, and along with 5 other guys, and going home, and I'm talking about this most of the way home. And my dad said, "Pick another major." And you know what? I didn't have a direction. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to pick a major. I didn't know what I was really wanting to do. And then my dad said, "All right, why don't you join the Navy like your 2 older brothers?" They were 10 and 12 years older than I was. And my thought was, I don't want to follow those 2 idiots. Those of you that are siblings understand that statement. And I was working for the local well driller through my senior year and my freshman and sophomore year. I continued that summer working for him. It was hard work, but I loved it. And but something kind of changed in my life because I got a letter from Uncle Sam. "You are now drafted." And to be honest, I didn't want to go to Vietnam. I joined the Air Force. I went down to Sioux Falls, and the Air Force recruiter looked at me and he said, "I don't know what we're going to do with you." because you're colorblind, and there's a lot of jobs that you can't do being colorblind. And so but he looked at me and he said, well, you're 6'3" and you're 240 pounds. Would you ever consider being military police? And I got excited about that. Yes, I would. And so I joined the Air Force, went through boot camp, like we all did. All of them veterans went through boot camp. That's hell on wheels, believe me. And they did everything they could to beat you down to a pulp so that they could mold you in what they wanted to mold you into. That's fine. I was 21, whereas everyone else in my boot camp was 18, maybe 17 even, some of them. I didn't bend as easily as some of them did, and I kind of paid for it a little bit. But after boot camp, I went to police tech school in San Antonio. I was told that I was chosen to go to Minot Air Force Base, and I get to Minot, and they picked me for missile security, and I loved it because I could ride in a four-wheel drive pickup through 10 missile silos, and 6 months later I was promoted from rider to leader, so I could do the driving, and it was a blast. I had one situation of where the missile commander in the silos, 70 or 80 feet below ground, calls me up and said, you know what, we can't get to number 9. Nobody can get to number 9. Can you get to number 9? I understand you're from Minnesota. I said, we can try. So I get in the International Harvester, big high-wheel, four-wheel drive vehicle, and I take my rider with me, who happened to be from South Carolina, who had never seen snow before. And we go out to number 9. And we can't get there because there's a snowdrift about 4 foot or so. And I was backing up to turn around to tell the missile commander that we can't get there. And noticed a farm road going down to a plowed field that is really nice and clear. So I go down the farm road, I'm on to the plowed field, and if any of you have ever driven on a plowed field, it's kind of like this, you know. And this poor guy from South Carolina saying, what the hell are you doing? Well, just bear with me, we'll get there. The only problem was we were on the other side of the road from the silo. So we get up to where there wasn't any snowdrift anymore, and I'm angling this vehicle. And he said, what are you doing? Well, this is kind of a high boy, and I don't want to take it too perpendicular because I don't think we'll be able to stop. I don't want to take it too much of an angle. I'm afraid we'd tip over. So I'm trying to get it just right. He gets out. It's 40 below, he gets out. I figure, well, if that's the way he wants to be, that's fine. So I rev up and I whoom up on the thing and stop on the gravel road. Now he wants to get in. We go through the process. I crawl down into the actual missile and I call the commander and I said, there's a lot of snow on this, and I'm sure all of that is from that. But it, and we got back, and he was not sure he was going to ride with me anyway. So I made it to a command center post as an office deal, and my boss comes in one day, and he's higher ranked than I was. I was the 3 sergeant, and he comes in and he said, Dave, I got orders for Vietnam. Really? You sound excited. He said, I am. What's wrong with you? No, he said, they're developed this new technology, and I'm going to central Vietnam, a place called Phu Cat Air Force Base, and that's where they have a live fire zone around the base, and they have night ambush teams, and the problem with these night ambush teams is that they're firing on movement in the dark. Of course you have to. If something's moving in front of you and you have a free fire zone, you kill it. Problem is, they were firing 2 to 3 to 4 times a week, and they were finding 8 or 9 warthogs, one case of water buffalo, in one case a jungle cat, and so they're not only wasting ammunition, not a big deal, but they're giving their position away. This is a picture of the radar unit that I'm going to be in charge of, and I need a sergeant to go with me, and I want you because I trust you. Oh, this radar system is amazing because it tells the difference between animal and human movement. 1969, the process was phenomenal, and it was unbelievable. So I decided to go. My parents, my mom especially, was not real happy with me because she had our oldest son in the Korean War, and she knew what he went through, and she was really afraid of what I was going to be going through. I had to go through 3 weeks of combat training. That was sort of fun because you could throw grenades, you could have all kinds of good fun. I was shipped to Fort Lewis Army Base up in Washington State. So I flew to Seattle. I took a bus to Fort Lewis. The bus actually picked me up. I get there. There's 300 GIs from every type of Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard. Some women nurses, a couple. There were 300 people there waiting to get on a plane. We get a number and we board this plane. It was a Korean airliner with Korean women stewardesses. That's interesting. We board, we find any seat we can. Everything was filled except for the middle seats. That's where I sat. Looked at one guy on the left, how are you doing? Didn't want to talk. Like the guy on the right, how are you doing? I'm not talking to you. Nobody talked to each other. And I don't know why. I think everybody was scared of what's going to happen. And we spent the whole flight that way. Nobody talked. And about after 6 hours, I fell asleep. And in the middle of that sleep, I heard a booming voice. David, I will protect you. And I woke up, and I hit the guy next to me, and I said, what'd you say? I didn't say anything. Go back to sleep. What did you say? I didn't say anything. I'm going, what is going on here? We land in Cameron Bay at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Too late to take any flights out to any of the bases. So they had 300 cots in the middle of this hangar. And that's where they brought in food and everything, but that's where we slept, on cots. In our skivvies, in our civilian clothes, because nobody had their uniform, their fatigues yet. 3 o'clock in the morning. By the way, I'm only going to talk very briefly about 3 instances that caused me some major issues regarding PTSD. 3 o'clock in the morning was item number 1, was the lights came on, the loudspeaker was there. Anybody here with combat training, stand. See, I should have gotten smart. I should have sat down. No one would have known, but like an idiot, I stood up. And they handed us M16s with a belt of ammo clips, and we boarded buses, or not buses, we boarded a troop transport, and they told us that their Viet Cong had been spotted in this one wooded area, and they were gonna drop us off in 10-foot spacings, and it was our job to sweep that whole area for Viet Cong and kill them if we spotted them. First night in country. I've done a lot of sweeps in my high school days for pheasants, for deer, for fox. Killed a lot of pheasants in my day, several deer, a couple of fox, but they didn't shoot back. So I got a little nervous about this, so they set you down. We walk through the whole thing, we get through the whole thing, and my whole thought process That M16 was on automatic. My finger was right next to the trigger. I was just hoping that somebody on one side of me wouldn't get in front of me, and I'd be able to, if that happened, I would be able to recognize him. Or if a VC popped up, would I kill him before he killed me? I don't know. We got to the end where the light all units were all lit up. We didn't find anything. Went back. I couldn't sleep. I'm sure anybody that did that couldn't sleep. And next morning they fed us breakfast. They gave each of us, for whatever base you were flying to, directions and what hangar to go to. I show up at that hangar. There's 25 other GIs going to the same Phuket Air Force Base. I load. We fly out. No issues. We land 10 o'clock in the morning. We step off, and we're standing there. There's a captain in front of us looking at a sheet, and he says, "Where's David Hanson?" See, again, I shouldn't have raised my hand. I raised my hand, and he said, "You qualified in an M60 machine gun." I could have said no. I said, "Yes." "Go with this airman right here." I went with the airman, and I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I don't know. I was just told to come here and pick up some guy by the name of David Hanson." He said, "All right." So we get to this helicopter. The pilot is a lieutenant, and he says to me, "You're qualified at an M60? I said, "I am." He said, "We're going to get you belted in." And he said, "My door gunner is sick today. He can't handle it. And I've got a shipment to deliver, and I'm glad to have you here. I understand it's your first day." Yep. He belts me in, straps go across. He pulls the M60 in front of me. It wasn't loaded yet, so I loaded it, shut down the cover. It's got butterfly handles, not like the regular M60 where the trigger is below. I'd never fired anything with butterfly handles before, but I've seen John Wayne do it. I think I can handle this. So he said, "Don't worry, it's noon. There's no VC, no Vietcong out here at all, so don't worry about it. I understand it's your first day." Okay. We take off. 20 minutes into the flight, I'm noticing bing, 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 holes in the fuselage. I got this helmet with earphones and a mic, and he said, "Geez, we're taking incoming. I'm going to roll and give you a better shot." And now I'm looking directly at the dark jungle with these flashes showing up all over the place, and then seeing these holes come up in the fuselage. So I started firing at those flashes, and I fired so hard I thought I was going to break the thing, and the flashes quit, and he leveled off, and he's going along, and he said, "It's your first day in country, and you have at least 5 to maybe 8 kills." And you know what? I didn't care. I was still scared. So I'm supposed to be trained on this radar unit. And so I meet my former boss, who now is not my boss, but he's the head of this unit. And he shows me this unit, and it's about the size of a laptop computer. It's about the same thickness and everything. And he said, "We're going to blindfold you, and I want you, it's turned on, and I want you to hold it and tell me when you hear movement." And sure enough, I heard movement. I said, "I heard movement." "Okay, now follow it." Well, how do you follow it when you're blindfolded? You can't see where he went, this way or this way. So I have to go like this. Oh, I spotted him going this way. He said, "Boy," he said, "you're quick." And I said, "Thank you." and then he had a dog run in front and then do the same thing. And the sound was because the distance in the legs are shorter. Okay, that makes sense. And now we're going to have a woman run. Okay. And I didn't tell any difference between a man and a woman. So he said, "I don't think you're going to find too many women out in the jungle." So that night I was third man on a 6-man night ambush team. And the first thing that the head of the bush team, his name is Bobby Hare, and I'm still friends with him today, in fact. First thing he told me is, "When you see the guy step there, with his left foot, you step there with your left foot. And when he goes here with your right foot, you step there with your right foot. Because there's all kinds of booby traps here, and a lot of times when someone steps in there and steps on a booby trap, that wood belt comes up and there's nails on it, and it's driven into the side of your leg. And it doesn't kill you, but it hurts. And so I followed the footsteps of the lead, and we got out. We set up in front of a open area, and we laid there. We had throat mics and earpieces. Again, 1969. If someone was going to say something, you know, he would simply hold his throat mic and say, "Hence, got movement at 2 o'clock." Now it's my job to stand up and hold this computer at 2 o'clock and go back and forth. And I heard a lot of this going on, and I said, I'm not sure what that is. It sounds like it's dogs. Turned out it was 7 or 8 warthogs. And so we didn't fire. I told everybody it's warthogs. They didn't fire. 4 or 5 days later, David got movement at 10 o'clock. I'd stand up and hold the thing, and there was this, and I'm wondering, what the hell is this? And in the clearing comes a black panther. Okay, I'm laying down, M16 is right in front of me. This black panther keeps coming, and he walks over my M16, and he walks right beside me and keeps going. And I'm going, okay, it's been about 5 minutes now, and I gotta pee. And the protocol is you stand up and you walk behind the group, take your M16 with you, and you pee. So I'm standing there in a bush, and I'm peeing on this bush, and this is a favorite story of my grandson's. I'm peeing on this bush, and all of a sudden the bush separates, and I'm peeing on this black panther's head. If that doesn't stop your flow. They haven't stopped laughing at that one. I get back. I was on that unit for 3 months. 6 nights a week. During TET, 7 nights a week. 3 months. We never fired our weapons. The captain of our unit was so impressed by that, but something new was happening. They developed an entire new radar system. The problem with what I had, you could tell movement, you could tell direction, and you could follow it, but you couldn't tell how far it was. You couldn't tell how many it was. You could tell if it was human or not. We didn't find any human movement. So the captain says, why? I said, I don't know. Did the VC really know where we were and not want to be there? I think that's a possibility. And these are what ambush teams look like. And we use a lot of face paint. And they carried a M60 machine gun, and now you have this belted ammo that other people have to carry to help out, and so that you don't run out of ammo. And this one is an M16, but below the barrel is a grenade launcher. And we never fired anything in the 3 months that I did that. And the captain was so amazed. And he said, we're putting this unit in the same tower that you deployed from. So the ambush teams left from this area, were dropped off by a truck, and we walked out from here. There's barbed wire and trip flares along this fence. There's a K9 unit that operates between the tower and about 100 yards over was a mortar pit where we had 5 guys that were operating mortars We had 2 mortars operating at a time, and so they put this unit was 60 foot tall, it was 14 foot square, and it had a roof on it. This is a light all unit. It's infrared light. We had a starlight scope connected to the top of that ceiling. That starlight scope was that big around and about that long. Looked like a massive, not microscope,
Telescope.
yeah, telescope. Thank you. With that, at night, I could look at you just as well as I'm looking at you right now, at night, with a little bit of moonlight. If there were problems, you turned on this infrared light, they couldn't see it, the human eye can't pick that up. It just made it look like the sun was shining. And so that was manned by 2 before the radar unit was installed. This is the radar unit itself. And it's a small unit. It has a scope in the middle, and that scope is only 3 inches wide by 4 inches tall. And like any radar, if you've ever looked at World War II movies or any movies, you see that radar beam going back and forth. That's what was happening here. And when movement happened, a blip came. And then what you did is you could stop that movement of the actual scope itself, move it back, find that unit or find that movement, and then you could actually wheel down a little stripe to it, and you could actually listen to the movement. And then you could go back and forth, not in this kind of an area, but just in this area, and it could tell how many were actually there. And it gives you distance, it gives you coordinates, and whenever. It had a range of 5,000 yards, which was right out to the Phuket River, and anytime the VC or Vietcong could come across the river, we could spot them. And so what I did is I had a landline that went right to the mortar pit. I called that landline and said, okay, we have movement, and it's 2,000 meters out, and it's this grid coordinates. And then what I would do is I'd keep that really segmented in that area. I'd actually monitor them and move when I needed to move. And when the mortar shells came in, you could hear them screaming, wham, boom, wham, boom. And then I kept it there even after they quit. They run about 20 mortar shells. And there's an example of some of the mortar pieces that are on the table. And there's also an example of some of the VC rockets that they sent in. And I didn't glue those to the table or to the paper because I want you to lift that up and feel how heavy those things are. It's amazing. If that would have struck your body, it would rip your body up pretty severely. So we actually fought the war at anywhere from 400 or 500 meters to 2,000 meters without an issue. And I think the Viet Cong figured it out. They would come on this base during the daytime, and they'd look at the tower. And radar wasn't operating in the daytime. It only operated at night, because I was the only one that knew how to run it and operate it. And I think they figured out that that was radar. And so there were times when a trip flare lit up right in front of the tower, and then we got into a firefight at 30 feet. I had a huge advantage being 60 feet in the air versus them. The captain said, well, how did they get by the radar? Well, pretty simple. You know, if 5 guys or 6 guys are running for 20 yards and then stop totally still, and the radar beam goes by and doesn't see any movement, it's not going to register. And then they could run another 20, 30, 40 yards and stand perfectly still. The radar beam comes back, you still didn't see them. And so that was the fallacy of the unit itself. The April 16th, 1970, the captain calls me and he says, you're going to have a visitor tonight. It'll be after midnight. I said, who is it? He said, I can't tell you. Okay. About 2 o'clock, 2 Jeeps come up. And when the Jeeps were running, they didn't use lights at all. They used night vision. And night vision, maybe to explain that, is once your eyes get accustomed to the dark, you can see much better than if the light turns on and then you turn the light off. You can't see much. Night vision is you can get your eyeballs accustomed to it more quickly by taking your eyes and moving it 15 degrees this way and then 15 degrees this way, and then your eyes adjust to the darkness faster. And so I could tell somebody was getting out of the Jeep, and it took him a long time to get out. And then he came over to the tower. Now he's got to climb a ladder 60 feet in the air. God, I swore that took him 4.5 minutes. We used to run up those stairs. I figured it was someone older. And he comes through the hole and he's having trouble. I had to help him get up into the tower itself. And he stands up and he said, "Who's Sergeant Hanson?" I said, "I am, sir." He said, "My name is Strom Thurman." He's a senator, isn't he?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I didn't really ever care about North Carolina. There he's standing there. I happened to be training a Marine on the radar unit, and Strom is looking over his shoulder, and he sees a blip. Now, there are differences in blips. A blip that doesn't move, whenever you go back and look at it real closely, but it doesn't move, could be a tree motion. Okay, that makes sense. So Strom sees this blip as the radar is going back and forth. And he reaches over and says, "Young man, what is that blip?" This is a Marine, right? You know what Marines are like. He says, "Well, it's nothing but a fucking tree, sir." Strom Thurman is rather a religious guy. And he leans over and he holds his shoulder, puts his hand in his shoulder, and he said, "Soldier, what kind of a tree?" "Nothing but a tree, sir." And he left. That was April. So that unit was so successful, they started putting these units in other air bases and other army bases and everything else. It was phenomenal. And I was the first one and the only one to start that. And I thought that was such a kick. It was amazing. This is one of the M60s on the tower, and this is one of the trainees that was pretending to fire the M60. And it's on a turret. I never had the ground supports on it because I was too afraid of, if you get in real close, you can't get that unit because it'll touch the side of the tower. This tower, by the way, was 1-inch plate steel on the outside, floor, 4 walls, and it was 6 inches of sandbags and 1-inch plate steel on the inside. Unbelievable fortress. May 7th. The other issue that I'll mention is we didn't see any movement on the radar. And like I said, we had a canine unit that went below the tower over to the mortar pit and back. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, that dog came unglued, just ravaging. He's just mad. He's just going all over the place. And the canine handler is having quite a time controlling him. And with this guy working the unit, the trainee, I went to the front, M60, and a tripler went off right below the tower. And I started firing. And I'm sure that I killed that first one. But then what happened was 7 or 8 guns started firing from in back of him in sort of a trench, firing up and glancing off of the tower and hitting the tin roof. It was just making horrendous amounts of noise. And we had 3,000 rounds of M60 ammo in this tower. And I fired half of it. I fired so much that the barrel on the M60 turned white. Now in an M60 you're supposed to fire in about 20 round blasts and then let the barrel cool. And I couldn't do that. I didn't know if they were going to start crawling the tower, so I had one of the other guys stand there with an M60 to deal with it there, and I kept firing, and then I had a misfire. I opened the hatch, and there's a shell in the chamber. The shell has been struck, so it's live. So now I should have just shut the chamber, except they were still firing, and shells or bullets were glancing everywhere. And so I took out my knife and I was pulling that shell out of the chamber when it exploded. I had my flashlight there with my hand covering the light part so that it wouldn't show off all over the world. And that flashlight shattered and it burnt my hand. And of course it turned off. And I felt in the chamber and the shell was out. So I took the shell out and threw it. Now comes the question, did the shell get through the end of the barrel or not? I couldn't take the chance. Everything was still going crazy. So I reloaded and started firing, and luckily enough, there were no issues. I turned the gun in that next morning. We had shells all over the inside of that floor that were 6 inches deep. And the day crew said, we'll take care of that, don't worry about it. You guys just get out of here. So we left. And I turned the M60 into the ammo place. Like I said, I can't think of what it is. Turned it in, and they said, God, Hanson, you were firing all night last night. How many rounds did you go through? And I said, about 3,000, but he said, well, this M60 might be shot. I said, I'll pick it. That's a good M60. I said, I want it tonight. And I went and asked for that number of the M60, and the guy told me, he said, you know, you melted that barrel right to the gun. And he said, the only thing I think that was keeping that barrel straight was the shells going through it, because it had kind of sloped a little bit. So it was just one of those things that lingers in my mind for probably ever. I don't know. On that sheet is some of what I believe is the most common symptoms of PTSD, and emotional detachment. I didn't know quite what to think of that, except I felt it. I had a difficult time, and I think because of you have that in Vietnam where you have friends, and if friends are killed, you feel like you shouldn't have gotten maybe so close to them, and that maintains even after you get out. And I had real issues with that. Hypervigilance, oh boy, if you would have slammed your finger or hand on the desk like that 15 years ago, I would have jumped sky high. I did stupid things to try to protect us and the family. Anger, recklessness, boy, no one can do anything to me. I can drive 70 miles an hour in a 55-mile zone and never worry about it until I got a ticket. What the hell's wrong with him? He gave me a ticket. Didn't he know I'm a non-vet? Apparently he didn't, and he didn't seem to care. And then I got a second. And about 2 weeks later, I'm going home to visit Lindy, by the way. This should have been worth it. And I got a third, and I had my license taken away. You have to come to this building in St. Paul where they will take your license. You can't drive. I drove, but I parked 3 blocks away from the Capitol. I walked to the Capitol. They took my license away. And I got in the car and drove out over the weekend to see Lindy. Because she was that important. Is she here?
No, she was here.
Yeah.
She left.
They can do that to me. So sometimes you get into situations where you just don't want to abide and think that you don't have to abide by some laws. Intrusive thoughts. Boy, I tell you, it was tough to watch. Any shoot 'em up, country and western, cop shows on TV. I still get goosebumps when I hear firing going on, but I don't jump anymore. So there's a lot of things. You can have issues with nightmares. I went through that for 40 years. And Lindy went through that for 40 years. Because she would wake me in a rage, trying to get me to wake up. And it didn't come easy. And then I would try to go back to sleep again. So she felt a lot of this as well. Flashbacks. A flashback is something that you look at and see just as vivid as I'm looking at Dave right now. As vivid as that. And I would see Viet Cong running in shorts because they didn't want to wear shirts, they didn't want to wear pants, so the fear they got caught up in the barbed wire. And I started having issues with that multiple times. I had 2 minor thoughts of suicide. I didn't really want to do it. I was traveling both times. Both times were in a hotel. I saw Viet Cong run across the room and jump out the window. I was in the 4th story in Reno, Nevada at the time. And I went to that window. I didn't have my weapon with me. I couldn't get out the window because the window would only open that far. Thank goodness. I might have jumped, I don't know. We were home one night, 15 years ago, April 2015, 10 years ago. And I heard some movement running across the wood floor. I went to the stairwell and 3 Viet Cong went by. And why I didn't go grab my 9mm, I don't know. I had that position just under the mattress, between the mattress and the box spring. And that was ready to grab, cock, and fire in seconds. I was that bad off. But I didn't do it. I ran down the stairs. I saw him go into the family room. I grabbed the biggest butcher knife we had, and I chased him. I chased him through and into the garage. Now, how they got through the garage door without opening, I don't know. But I had to open the garage. I had to actually unlock the garage door to get out into the garage. I looked under each of the cars. I looked in the 3rd stall where there was nothing. I couldn't find him. And I was scared. Went back into the house and I sat on the floor. And I sat there thinking about suicide. The only problem is, what kind of a mess would this knife create that Lindy would have to clean up? That scared me. Lindy's computer was on the desk, so I opened it up and I typed in VA suicide hotline. And I didn't call it, I texted it. Why? I don't have the foggiest idea. I figured I could shut it off quicker. And Chad One comes up. And he said, "Where are you?" Minneapolis area. "How far is the VA hospital?" "About 40 minutes. "Get there. I'll call there's a doctor on staff, I'll call him, I'll have him ready for you." I clicked off. And I sat there and continued to think about suicide. I clicked back on. Interestingly enough, Chad One comes up. He said, "I thought I lost you." I said, "Not yet. I'm texting now." And he said, "I talked to the doctor. He is called a psychiatrist. They're on call. They're going to be there within the hour. You get there." being a man, what am I going to do? I sneak up the stairs, I go into our bedroom, I have a pile, I'm a little anal about things, I have a pile of clothes for the next day. And so I pick up my pile of clothes, and I'm walking very carefully out the door, and I hear this, "Where are you going?" "I'm going to the VA hospital." "You're not driving, I am driving." "Yes, ma'am." Thank goodness. She drives me to the VA hospital, the doctor was there. He went through, my blood pressure was skyrocketing, and that's an hour later. And he said, the psychologist is in this office, I'll bring you over there. We walk into that room. She's maybe 16, 17 years old. Her first statement to me was, "Do you want your wife here while we talk?" And my response was, "Maybe it's time she here." But I think she really knew what was going on. One of our daughters said that I knew something was going on with you, I just didn't know what. So we talked, and she talked about a program to get me into. It was called PE, Prolonged Exposure. That's on the back side of that. And she said, I think that would be the direction for you to go. I met the head of the PTSD unit the next day, and he said, "I'll introduce you to a therapist." And her name was Jackie Wright. She was a psychologist. She made me take my cell phone and record on my cell phone the most horrendous moments that I went through. And that was hard to do. And then I was to take that home at night, and I was to listen to that tape over and over and over and over again, and watch your anxiety levels diminish. I couldn't do that. I couldn't get over the bawling that I was going through. I didn't want Mindy to hear it. I didn't want our two girls to hear that. I was in the deepest corner of our basement. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't listen to that. So I went back that next Wednesday, had a weekly Wednesday meeting, and I told her, "Jackie, I can't do this." And then she said, "All right, no big deal. You ever watch Vietnam movies?" "No, I'm not going to watch that." "Well, that's what we're going to get you on. We're going to get you on Good Morning Vietnam. That's a pretty docile movie. There's only one point in that movie that the bomb goes off in the bar. That scared the hell out of me. And my anxiety levels rose. And they teach you how to estimate those levels. And it was like 8 or 9 on a scale of 10. And now I had to rewind it to the same point on that and watch it again. And my level was still 8 or 9. And then a third time, ooh, my levels are 5 or 6. A fourth time, ooh, my levels are 3 or 4. And she said 3 or 4 is normal. Wow, I'm feeling a difference. So I go back and I told Jackie, I said, "Am I done?" No. The next movie is, the next movie was, all of a sudden I forget the name of it. That was an actual group of army that were attacked by Viet Cong, and there's firing through the jungles, and that got my levels really high. But I went over it again and again, and I didn't do it in 4 times. It took about 8 times before my levels started coming down. Wow, I feel that. I'm getting somewhere. So I went back to Jackie and I said, "Am I done?" She said, "No." The next movie is Apocalypse Now. Okay. That movie is, and this is where my experience in the helicopter being fired upon came into view, because it was, I couldn't hardly watch it. they're firing on these Viet Cong running through partially the jungle to the beach and everything else, and the shells were hitting the steel floor of the helicopter. And that just sound of that steel floor, those shells hitting it, just drove me nuts. And it took me about 15 times to get through that, but my levels came down. Oh, I was really on cloud nine. I go back to Jackie that following week. I think I'm done. Jackie said, no. You remember you told me that you built your house into a wooded area? Yeah. You told me that at night you cannot walk in those woods? Yeah. Now, I want you every night, starting Monday night, I want you to, or Thursday night, because we met on Wednesdays, I want you to walk in the woods and I want you to stand by a tree and stand there till your levels come down. First night, I couldn't do it. I couldn't walk in my own woods. I came in and Lindy said, well, that didn't take long. I said, no, it didn't take long because I never got past the corner of the garage. The next night I walked out. It took me 15 minutes to walk out into the woods to the biggest tree I could find and stood there staring at the bark. And my anxiety levels eventually came down after about 20 minutes of standing there. Wow. Okay. So I walked into the house. The next day I went out. I walked out into the woods much more easily. And it didn't take 20 minutes, it took about 10 minutes for my anxiety levels to come down. And the next night took about 4 or 5 minutes for that same thing to happen. And the 5th night, I went out, I walked right into the woods, I stood next to that tree, I'm humming, I'm doing about anything I wanted, I'm listening to cars go by on the road. Oh geez, there's no issues here. And so I thought I heard something down, a little bit down the knoll behind the house. So I decided to walk down the knoll and around the house and then come up on the other side. And I scared a deer up. And I knew it was a deer. And I followed the deer till he went beyond our property. And I told Jackie that. She said, wow, that's phenomenal. That is absolutely phenomenal. Jackie, I think I'm done. No? What else are you going to throw at me? These are woods that you already know. You have woods in your area you don't know? Well, Purgatory Creek is just 3 blocks away. I had to walk down there in the daytime just to pick out a spot to kind of go to and how to get into the woods and all of that. And then I went back up, and when it was dark, I wore my VFW jacket because it was in October, I think. And so that's a nice warm jacket. I wore my Vietnam cap, and I had a flashlight. So I go down, I'm walking without the flashlight, and I go across the parking lot, I walk into the woods without a flashlight, and I stood there for 15, 20 minutes, and not one iota of fear. Whoa, this is good. I don't have to worry about it anymore. So I go out and I noticed a car in the parking lot. The engine is running. The windows are steamed up. So I go over, they were in the back seat. I knock on the window. The window goes down about that far. And a young kid, maybe 17, 16, I don't know. He peeks out the window. Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm on patrol here. I'm on patrol here twice a week. And I noticed that you're parked here illegally. Yes, sir. Now, I'm not going to turn you in. I won't write you up. But I think you better leave. Boy, he got into that front seat. He wheeled out of that car. I thought he was going to run me over. And he got out of there. But I bet he never comes back to that park. He probably thinks I'm still dealing with it.
He's saying Jackie now.
I should have. These are the kinds of treatments that the VA has, and the first is the biggest problem with treatments in veterans is just like I did for 40 years. I don't need it. I'm okay. I don't need this. And I'm trying to work with a veteran right now who is an Afghan veteran having huge issues with PTSD. I got his name through a friend. And I've been sending him some information on PTSD and treatments. And then I called him and he said, I don't want to hear from you anymore. I'm blocking your call. And he's blocking my call. Okay. So I asked his friend, do you ever get in touch with him? And he said, he won't listen to me either. So I think one of the biggest problems that we have is recognition that there is help. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, gets you, and I've done this, but there comes the audio tape of my most horrible experience and re-listening to it over and over and over again. I couldn't do it. And Jackie told me that we would go to the movies, and so that just kind of morphed into this. And so I was doing the movies and had tremendous success. Good Morning Vietnam, Deer Hunter is the name I'm trying to think of, and Apocalypse Now. I was so freed by that, it was unbelievable. I went back and told Jackie the exact same thing. Am I done? No, I'm sorry. She asked me, do you think you're done? I said, yeah, I think I'm done. And I had an evaluation of this program, along with four other veterans. Three of the veterans were Afghanistan or Iraq vets, and they wouldn't come to these meetings because I'm looking for a job, that's what I gotta do now, or if I just got a job, I can't afford to take the half day off to come to this. And so I talked to this friend of mine who was in charge of the PTSD unit. Why can't we get these guys involved in some sort of computerized communication with those? And he said, that's a heck of a good idea. And they're doing that now routinely. That's amazing, and I'm so thankful for that. The eye movement desensitization. Now I understand moving your eyeballs one way and the other while you're thinking of maybe some horrible movements, and I'm not sure how that works, but apparently it is successful. But Paul comes to me one time and says, my cousin is working with something called Mantram, and it's a similar response of repeating, but it's spiritual words or phrases chosen by the patient and having tremendous success. So everything that Paul sent me, many pages, I forwarded to Matt Cahill, the head of the PTSD unit here in Minneapolis, and he had heard of that, and they haven't tried it yet, but he said, I do understand they are having some success in other hospitals. So that's a good thing. And of course you have medications. I've never been one to take a lot of meds. And a lot of those meds have side effects, and some of those include Zoloft, Paxil, Effexor. The side effects can include upset stomachs, sweating, headaches, dizziness, decrease in sexual desire, all kinds of things. So I guess I'm not one to take a lot of medications, and I kind of stayed away from that. But that's the end of the presentation. Ooh. Oh. I forgot this picture was on here. That's Hill 151, where 4 U.S. military police man that station for a week and report to the base of any movement. So This really gets to the gist of everything. Part of what I did in the success that we were going through in Vietnam, when you come away from an instant where you were firing at 30 feet and you come out alive, you get a lot of pats on the back. You get a lot of, boy, Dave, attaboy, Dave. You get a lot of that. Coming in from the jungle after night ambush, even though you didn't fire your weapons, you do that? I can't believe it. Attaboy, Dave. So you have a tendency, I kind of equate it to a young guy in a football team who scores on a 75-yard pass and runs another 30 yards for the touchdown, and he gets into the end zone and he starts beating his own chest. I'm really good, I'm really important. And that's how I felt. I'm really good, I'm really important. 15 years ago, I got involved in a men's Bible study group at Wooddale Church in Eden Prairie. Met a lot of nice guys, still involved with that, in fact. Still have some of the same friends. They invited us to a breakfast, and at this breakfast, one of the ministers spoke, and at the end of his speech said, we had 70-some guys there, and he, in the front of the group, he said, has anybody here actually heard the voice of God? I sat there dumbfounded. Because I realized that that voice on the plane that I heard could have been God. And then to experience bullet holes in the fuselage of that helicopter, inches away from my head. 3 indentations on the bottom of that steel seat that I was strapped into, inches away from death. All of the stuff that was happening through the whole deal, realized that I started out that this was my plan, and I realized it really wasn't my plan. It could have been God's plan. I don't want sympathy by doing this. I don't want praise by doing this, because I do think that the final verse in God's plan was to help veterans get through PTSD and find out there is a solution. Recently, I took a veteran to the hospital, and I went in to see Matt Cahill for the first time, and he came out, introduced himself, come on back to my office, and we're sitting there chatting, and I said, Matt, is there any way that I can help veterans through the PTSD issues? And he said, Dave, then he stopped. And he said, you're Dave Hanson. I said, yes. He said, you're one of our videos. That PTSD committee that called me way back when, and we did that VA video for the VA. He said, do you realize that we show that video anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week to veterans who claim they don't need the help, they can't get the help, you can't treat me? And we show them that video. And he said, they come around. Not all are successful, but most are. So he said, you're doing amazing things with that video. So he said, no, you can't help out any more than you already have. Okay. And then in my hometown of Madison, the gal that's in charge of the National Public Radio station in Appleton, Minnesota, I get a phone call. And she said, would you be willing to do a video on what it's like to come home to your hometown? And I said, wow, I'd be honored. And I did that. And then I get a call from a national Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Association asking if I would do a video for that. And they showed that video in Florida at a huge racetrack. I don't remember the name of the racetrack, 10,000 Vietnam vets showed up there to watch that video. And I'm hoping that someone there needed to get some help. So I realize that most of you aren't veterans, but if you understand what PTSD is, and you can see the symptoms, and you realize that more than likely they're going to resist whatever you do until they get to a point of no return. And I hope that point of no return isn't suicide. So I thank you all for coming.
I'll say a few words.